Hey everyone, today on Practicing Catholic, Scott and Taylor are giving me advice for my upcoming marriage.
Don't count the cost. Don't get in that mind space. So the question is, how do you practically do that? And so now...
Let me ask you that. How does one practically do that?
Thank you. That's a great question, Scott. I'm glad you asked. And men are so intuitive. We all know it, but they miss a lot.
We do.
I'm so glad that this is being recorded so I can listen back to it in like 5 years.
Just trying to set you up for success.
Yeah, thanks.
That's right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Practicing Catholic, where we discuss the often arduous but always fruitful practice of holiness in everyday life. I'm going to get that down better and better every episode. Everybody, I am Taylor Kemp.
And I am Dr. Scott Hefelfinger.
And you are?
Emily Ashman, and soon to be Emily LeGrand.
Emily LeGrand.
That's a big moment.
That is a big moment.
Indeed.
And that is going to be the central topic of our episode today, everybody. We are talking about marriage. We are talking about Emily Ashman, soon to be Emily LeGrand, who's getting ready for marriage. And today we are talking about things of preparing for marriage, getting ready to be Mrs. or Mr., which doesn't change, but getting ready for marriage. And we're excited to do so. So Emily Ashman, everybody, is getting married on November 14th. So please, please say a prayer. Remember to say a prayer. Offer a rosary for her. That would be greatly appreciated. And our task today was to...
Think of it as a wedding gift. We are going to just share a few tips about marriage. I think especially helpful for, newlyweds, but, even if you're married, it's never too late to try new things. So from our own experience in our respective families, a few little gifts for you.
Scott says a few because he prepared way too many and he had to narrow it down.
We've
way
had
too
to
many.
learn a lot of lessons, so I just had some thoughts I wanted to share.
Yep.
Nice.
All right, let's dive in. Do you want to start or do you want me to start? How many do you have total?
Are we going in ascending order or descending order?
I think it likely that I jump
want
around.
to ascend. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
You go first.
What? All right.
Yeah, because I'm going to cross it off if you say what I have.
Okay. Here's how I thought about it, Emily. There I am. There's my wife and I. We're sitting at a coffee shop on a Saturday. In walks Emily and or Robert. Sits down and says, we're about to get married. You guys have been married for a while. You have kids and you've been doing this. What do you think we should know? What do you think we should be practicing? So that was the mindset I took in. Are you ready for number one?
Bring it
so
on.
ready.
Okay. The first one that I began with that I would say to you guys if we were sitting down for coffee is to highlight that the sacrament of marriage is, as the Catechism teaches, a sacrament of service. So I have often thought I think that it's common to think about marriage, and I have thought about marriage at times as something closer to the sacrament of fulfillment.
Personal fulfillment.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that we pursue marriage, first because God calls us to it, but second because it makes us happy, which it should. We love being loved, we love loving, and then especially for those that are engaged and preparing to be married, they're in love, which is super satisfying. It's awesome. But we must never forget that the sacrament of marriage it's a sacrament of service, that it is fundamentally, it is a gift of self. And then coming at it from the experience of my wife and I have been married now we're coming up on 9 years and we have 4 kids. How often it has been, particularly in the difficult moments, to remember that it is fundamentally a call to service and not to receive. It's to serve the other. So that's my first one, that the sacrament of marriage is, as the Catechism says, it is a sacrament of service.
Yep.
What do you
Great.
think?
Sounds
Questions?
awesome.
Have you heard that
questions
before?
at this. I think that's phrased in a good way, that marriage is a sacrament of service, not of personal fulfillment.
I think she's giving you a thumbs up, Master Kemp, so you can feel validated.
Appreciate my proper title being used.
Yes.
Thank you.
I've got one that is a good riff on that, I think. But I maybe we should just step back for 1 second. So I do teach a class on marriage here at the Augustine
It's like a cheat code,
Institute.
but go on, yes.
It's like what?
It's like a cheat code.
cheat code.
Like you're going to have such great wisdom for everybody, which is
That's actually
beneficial.
not where I was going with this.
Right.
I hadn't thought of that.
Totally.
What I was thinking of is in that class, it quickly becomes very evident that marriage is something that everybody in one way or another has some experience with. And so it's a very kind of personal and even intimate thing. And some of those experiences are really hard. So I just want to tell our audience, we're going to be speaking obviously from our experience. We're speaking to Emily. Our experience is not going to be the same as everybody else's. And there will be some who have like very hard experiences, others who have probably done marriage a lot better than I have, and there won't be anything new here. So I just want to kind of give that caveat that, we don't want to downplay other people's experience, challenges, all of those things. But just to kind of speak a little bit from our own experience. The coffee shop is a great example. Like we're just sitting down and we're chatting. So, okay, but Sacrament of Service, yes, very good. And I thought one of my ideas was that to remember that love needs practice. We're on a show called Practicing Catholic, raising the bar on what it means, hopefully, to be a practicing Catholic, to actually practice and enact and form habits related to the faith. So love needs practice. And I think what's helpful about this is love is an act of the will. It's not only a feeling, there is a feeling involved, and that's a beautiful thing. But because it's an act of the will, we have to put it into practice, and we have to do that daily in ways large and small. But love also, to be received by the other, needs to be expressed in a certain way. So I think it's really important to talk with your spouse, to talk with the other, and discover what makes your spouse feel loved. I know in our marriage early on, and even still now, there were certain things that I would do, right, or maybe give gifts or whatever it might be, and I feel like, yeah, I'm just knocking it out of the park. I'm batting 1,000 on like loving my spouse. Meanwhile, she's sort of like, oh, that's nice, and I'm grateful that you sort of thought of me, but
the plane's not landing.
Yeah, exactly. So love needs practice, and to practice it also means communicating really well about what are the things that I receive as love, what make me feel loved, I can appreciate. And often what we do is we tend to love people in the way that makes us feel loved. Yep. But it doesn't always connect. So there's some really great opportunities for conversations and learning about how to love each other really well. And the fruit of practice is that you get better and better at loving each other, which is a remarkable thing in the adventure of marriage.
Okay, so I had one very similar, which was practice telling your spouse what you need and don't assume that he or she knows,
right?
Which is very similar to putting in. And I think for those out there, and for Emily, as you're thinking about it, I think this is much harder than it comes across. Like this seems as almost like a self-evident truth. You're like, well, obviously. But I have found in Brittany and I's marriage, not so. That it's actually when you get into the throes of everyday life, and there's all kinds of stuff going on, and you've got like work, and everybody's got their own stuff. How easy it can be to slip into the assumption that your spouse does or should know, like what's going on. Like maybe you need a break from something, or maybe you need a show of, a sign of affection, or maybe you need something. And it's actually quite easy, especially as you've been married maybe for a couple years and you feel like, well, we should really know, like, gosh, my wife or my husband, he should know this.
Right.
And it's like the reality
Why doesn't she intuit this?
And there can be a buildup of resentment. And so it's very important, I think, early on to practice exactly what Scott, like practice this communicating, hey, like this really means a lot to me, or I really love these types of things, or when I get burnt out, I really need this type of, relief. Like I really just sometimes need to go on a walk, or I need to take a nap, or I need to go work out, or I need to go read a book, or I need to go see a movie with a friend. Like that kind of stuff really pays dividend because your spouse probably doesn't know. Robert probably doesn't know. And men are so intuitive. We all know it, but they miss a lot.
We do. Okay, so I've got one following on that, which kind of underscores the importance, and that is every season has its gift. So seasons are natural in life. and they are very natural in marriage. And so to this point about communicating about how you feel loved, what you need in a certain moment, and asking as well, like, how can I serve you better? This will change over the course of marriage, right? There's a certain season where, one thing will be fantastic and you feel super loved and it works really well. And then all of a sudden, a child is born and there's some, tectonic shift in the marital landscape. And that old thing just isn't working anymore for you or for your spouse. And so to have a kind of practice of ongoing conversation or check-ins even, right? I think is really important. And the seasonality, this is part of the adventure of marriage. So when my wife and I were preparing for marriage, the metaphor that it's maybe not even a metaphor, the term that we came up with, or the phrase was that marriage is an adventure. Adventures have their ups, their downs. Like, it would be a totally weird and boring adventure if it were just like monotonous, even like kind of monotonously good or stable. You just don't know what's going to come your way, right? And so that surprise is the seasonality. And some seasons are harder than others, but every season has its gift.
I wrote down the same one. Not every season has its gift, but the adventure piece. I completely agree. Emily,
Right on.
any thoughts, clarifying questions?
No, this is all great.
Okay.
I'm so glad that this is being recorded so I can listen back to it in like 5 years.
Just trying to set you up for success.
Yeah, thanks.
That's right. Okay, I got it. My next one is on, it's still in the practicing vein, because I was thinking about the same way, like, what are actionable things that can help us practice marriage? This one was a big one for me, and it resonated deeply with me. I hope it does with everybody else too. Practice not counting the cost.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I would say in the first couple years of our marriage, there was a very frequent, what I would say, counting the cost, where you're like doing the dishes late at night and you just are running through that mental list of, I'm doing this, my spouse is not, what the heck? And it can just build this mountain of resentment and frustration. And I think in reflecting on Brittany and I's 9 years of marriage, and we were together for 10 before that in dating, or maybe it was 8, but a lot of years. I was like, something that's fundamentally different now that I think is led to us having a far more healthy marriage is that both of us have learned to stop doing that. It still comes up now and then, but I remember early years of marriage, just this constant like tally of, I'm doing all this stuff and she's not, and she doesn't even seem to care. And it just built up this mountain of resentment. And now the reality is that was my perception, and she felt that way too, because we've talked about this over the years. Like, both of us felt that. Like, she felt like she was giving so much and I didn't know, or I didn't acknowledge it, or I didn't even care. And I felt like I was giving so much and she didn't acknowledge it, she didn't notice, she didn't care. And the reality was that we both did things differently that each of us valued at different levels. But the reality is you're both doing a lot, and you will never totally, truly, completely appreciate all that your spouse does, much of which is unseen. And so in this, call it the second half of our married life now, I would say both of us have gotten much better at like, don't count the cost. Like, don't get in that mind space. So the question is, how do you practically do that? And so now...
Let me ask you that. How does one practically do that?
Thank you. That's a great question, Scott. I'm glad you asked. I would say that especially if you're newlyweds, it still comes up for people who have been married, but when you can feel you can feel it building. You start to like run through that interior monologue of keeping tally. When those moments happen, it is very helpful to stop, acknowledge that that's happening, and say, Lord, you created me to give myself to this person. I'm not going to count the cost. Help me to let it go. That's like the prayer, because it still comes up when you're like doing this and you're whatever. And the prayer is like, help me to just let it go. Help me to not count it. Like, help me not to even think about it. Help me to just be, help me to let it go. So practice not counting the cost, which is really like, let it go. Practice to let it go. Don't keep the tally. It's never helpful.
Yeah.
Has that been true to your guys' marriage?
Oh yeah, for sure. I had couched this under the idea of generosity, which is basically the same. And I can remember like fairly early on, I was talking to a friend, and this friend was like sort of not joking about the like marital bank account, where when one person does something,
Yes.
there's a tally. And I just remember thinking to myself, maybe that works for them, or I don't need to judge that. But I thought to myself, boy, that would not be helpful for me, because I do tend to kind of keep the tally.
Yeah.
And in addition to the prayer that you mentioned, which I think is really helpful and very beautiful, to see what an opportunity there is to be conformed to Christ, who gave of himself entirely when we had turned from him, right? So not necessarily saying, I'm not trying to say objectively like, one spouse is doing less and that makes us somehow like Christ in that situation, but really to just turn our gaze to Christ and say, Lord, you loved us and did not count the cost. Help me to love in the same way. And thank you for this opportunity to kind of experience a little bit of, a side of love that you for sure experienced. So, so I think it's a great, a really great point.
Okay, your turn.
Okay. I sort of put two together in this one, so bear with me. Don't expect of your spouse what only God can fulfill. You probably had something like this.
I didn't, but that rings beautifully true.
Somehow, it's very easy, I think, to just put these kind of like massive expectations on our spouse. It goes to the personal fulfillment point too, where it's like, well, wait a second, isn't this about me? Did I just say that out loud? Because that's really like what it comes down to, I think. And this is where, so the thing that I lump together with it is to stay faithful to prayer, and ideally together. Now, different people have different views about couples and praying together, and does there need to be like a lengthy ritual that you have every day, or whether it's a rosary you pray together, or I know some very holy couples that will just say, actually, we don't pray together. We pray every day. We maybe go to daily mass every day, but we don't like sit down and sort of like intercede for each other or read the scriptures together and meditate on it. That's just not part of their spirituality. That was very eye-opening for me, because I have a particular couple in mind who might be like the most saintly couple that I know.
It's not Brittany and I.
All right, you said the quiet part out loud. And so I do think that by remaining faithful to prayer, and ideally I think there's some prayer together in some little way, that helps kind of relieve our spouse of the burden to kind of function like God and fulfill our every desire in life. That is something only God can do ultimately. And so we shouldn't put that burden unrealistically and really unfairly and uncharitably on our spouse.
Yep. Thought on that. Curious what you think. So if we were to take a little bit of the negative side, I think that is such a profound one. I think that can very subtly find its way into a marriage. Even if it's like you've had that, like you knew that going in, how quickly that can be subverted. And I think it's because, this is my theory, and this is what I'd be curious. So we know as human beings, we have a tendency to, place blame elsewhere, right? All of us face difficulties in life, generally. We definitely face difficulties in marriage. So when you face those difficulties, it is far easier to blame your spouse because they're the nearest party to receive whatever frustration you're harboring. And behind that is this thinking like they're responsible for my happiness. And if I'm not happy, it's because of him or her. And you place it there. And so I think like, do you think that's true? Do you think that's I
think that's probably very common and either a part of it or could be related to it, a cause of it, for sure.
So I think that's a great one. Emily, thoughts?
Great.
Just taking it in.
Yeah,
Love
I
it.
am taking it in.
Okay. All right.
I think she's kind of astounded maybe at the wisdom
speechless.
that you have on offer.
That I have. I'm glad you called that out. Yeah. Okay. Here's my next one. This one came from a deep place too. I did talk through this with my wife last night, which was I was like grateful for this show because it led to this really great conversation that Brittany and I wouldn't have had if it wasn't for this show. So I was happy about that. And this one really came from her. She was like talking things through and I put it in my own words, but this was from her. To never forget something that we know by faith of the sacrament, but that God is always with you and he sees you. this was coming from her, from a place of being a mother of many little kids, and just how sacrificial motherhood is always, but especially in those early years where you're giving yourself in a very concrete bodily way. You are like, Brittany described it as like it truly is a death to self. Like she's like, I feel like I just disappear, right? Because her whole life, her own interests, her personality, her time, her body, it's all going to the kids, especially in those early years. And she was voicing this real struggle in those early years, particularly of motherhood. But she felt it even in marriage, where the two are becoming one flesh, which means you are letting go of much of who you are to become this one. How hidden she felt and how unseen. There's been stretches of time where she just felt totally invisible. Both like she felt like she was lost to herself, lost to me, lost to our friends at time. Like it's just this real of a seed falling into the earth and dying to bear fruit, new life, or to bear new life. And feeling also unseen by God, like God doesn't see what I'm doing. And she's like, she was voicing this need to always remember the deep truth that like, God does see and he is with you, and we are never abandoned. And she's had to like almost voice that at times in these seasons of kind of losing yourself, which is just hard. That's the call of the gospel. We have to lose our lives. And just recognizing God is with you. He has never abandoned you, and to like be willing to voice that, like, Lord, I know you're still here. Help me see how. God is with you. He sees you. Marriage is a death. There's a lot of good stuff about it too. I don't only paint the negative, but it is a death to self. But God is with you, and he sees you, and he will see you through.
I love
Yeah,
that.
I think that's a beautiful point. And
Great.
Just to echo that, I mean, just for context here, your wife, my wife have, chosen to be at home with the kids, like as their full-time investment of their time. And so I know my wife has experienced that as well. And then there are people who are very close to us who, just express that to invest in that way, in all of those sets of ways, right, is so unappreciated by, call it the world, right? Like, why would you waste your life?
Yeah, it's misunderstood.
Having a child, caring for a child, staying at home with a child. Real life happens sort of elsewhere. And that's really hard. And so I think one practice that is really helpful, and this relates to something I had written down, is basically like, you can't say thank you too much to your spouse, right? What I added this actually because I had that it's hard, but ask forgiveness whenever it's necessary, and say I love you when it isn't necessary.
That's good.
But I would add to that, and at least once a day. Like, you should tell your spouse you love them at least once a day, and you should thank them probably more than once a day. Yeah. And you just can never say thank you enough, especially in precisely those early years where there are so many things that go unseen, right? Like mountains of diapers, hours in the night of being up, dealing with this, that, or the other thing, providing in one way or another for a child. And yeah, basically nobody sees it, right? And so to be able to say thank you, which I think helps a little bit to call to mind that, like, if my spouse can see this and thank me for it, God certainly does too. And so I think to be able to kind of show forth the Father's love a little bit by saying thank you is a beautiful thing.
Okay, back to you.
Okay, so when I was talking about this with my wife, there was one point where I thought it was a great expression of the complementarity that we have and her great wisdom in very concrete things. So what I had was enjoy and enrich the household together. And her expression of this was cook together, which I just love because it's so emblematic and simple. It doesn't have to be cooking, but the point is to spend quality time doing something together. And I think one of the best places is to invest in the household. And by the household, I just mean like whether that's cooking, whether that's culture building, whether that's playing games with the kids, game night, it could be watching something together in a kind of constructive way. because sometimes, there's a piece of advice that is often given, and I think it's a very good piece of advice, which is like, date nights once a week.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fantastic. And like people who do that, like it's probably really, really helpful. In our own lives, just, a whole set of parenting choices that we have made and circumstances that we have been in, that has not been possible for us. We don't live close to our families. Anyway, lots of reasons. And so what we have had to do is to realize that it is really important to spend quality time together. And there is ample opportunity within the home. So we've had some wonderful kind of like evening or late night traditions after the kids are in bed of like one year, my wife got for me a set of like pretty exquisite chocolates. And so we did this like little chocolate tasting together with port or something like that. And it was just fantastic. And so we got to have this moment. And so we've had lots and lots of moments that are beautiful moments in the home, and also moments investing in the home. And our kids are getting to be a little older now, and so we're beginning to have a little more time of actually going out together. And it's great too, but it doesn't, it's not like it's better, I think, than really great time investing in the home or spending quality time together in the home. So cook together.
Yeah, and I like the principle is so good because there's always creative ways that you can do it, because we're in a similar season. We're going out for like a date night, not on the table at all. But then there are ways to still spend some of that quality time. And then the other thing that came to mind for us, over the past couple years in our living room, we have a spot where a TV can go, but then we move it. And we've noticed over the years that if the TV's there in the room, at the end of the day, when you're exhausted and you just got the kids down and you do the dishes or whatever, if the TV's there, we turn it on and then we do that. And there's a way in which that's good sometimes.
Sure.
But then when we move the TV, we'll take it back down into the basement closet. We'll then go and sit in there with we'll make tea at the end of the day and we'll just talk. And so recognizing how, especially if you are struggling with communication, sometimes it's like, just put the phones away, put the TV away. And it actually is really helpful to just remove it. And then you'll find that you'll talk a bit more, which has been helpful for us in that. Okay. I have one more.
I've got one more. You go.
I had one more, but then you said it. So I crossed it off.
Okay.
This is the last one, which is it's something that I think everybody has probably heard, but I still thought it was worth reiterating, which is don't go to bed mad. I think it's in Sirach. Don't let the sun set on your anger. Don't go to bed mad. I think everybody's heard it, but I have found in our experience of marriage, there are times when it feels like the hardest thing in the world to not go to bed mad, because you've had a fight. You're frustrated about something. You both are, you've staked your battleground. How truly easy it can be to just be like, nope, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to bed. I don't even care. And how easy that can be. And when there's been nights when we have gone to bed mad and it's not good. It doesn't feel good the next day and it's difficult to reconcile. And there's been nights where we won the victory of reconciliation after difficult days or nights where we did before bed. It felt like it took a Herculean effort to be the one that's going to be like, I'm going to go give her a hug. I'm going to say, I love you. And I'm sorry that we're fighting. And sometimes it can be just that simple, but it felt hard. And so I think, you're going to face difficulties in marriage, and you're going to have difficult nights. You're going to have difficult seasons, and you're going to fight. You will fight in your marriage. There's good ways to fight, but you're going to fight. And those moments when it's 11:45, tempers are raised, you're frustrated, how important it is to just be like, I'm going to be the one to apologize and say like, I don't know how we got here, but I don't want to stay here. I love you. Give each other a hug and a kiss before bed. Like that to me, like that's such a victory. And it can be costly. Like it can really hurt to get there. So don't go to bed mad.
I think that's a good one. Yeah. We've had similar experiences, and I am a melancholic temperament. And what I've found, like a second best thing, because sometimes what I find is like I'm not ready. I can't even quite like articulate. Mm-hmm. I need to turn something over a lot before I'm ready to say it. And so sometimes it's just a matter of kind of acknowledging, like you said, mm-hmm. I'm having a hard time with something right now. Like I'm not quite ready to say it. I will tell you when it's ready to come out, but I love you, even though obviously my mood is like not where it should be. And that's kind of like a second best, I would say. And the other thing, and this is an example of growth, the growth potential in marriage, and relates to the last point I wanted to make, is like for me, with that melancholic temperament, there's a great challenge and vulnerability in learning and being able to like just say how I'm doing without having had the time to kind of like reflect and process. Because it's sort of like, I feel like this is half baked. I often think like, I'm probably like totally unjustified in like feeling this way, so I just shouldn't say it. Like I want to make sure that like I really know what this is, because I don't want to say something hurtful and unhelpful. But to be able to just say it before it's ready with all the appropriate like gentleness and qualifications, like I probably don't have this properly like assessed and worked out, and I'm not taking everything into account, but this is kind of like where I'm at right now. And to be able to do that is really hard for me, but I'm slowly getting better. And so here's the last tip I have, and it gets better. So often we might hear that phrase and think of something negative getting better, and that is true and can be true in marriage, thanks to the grace of the sacrament, thanks to hard work, thanks to help and all these things. But I actually have in mind the good moments. When before my wife and I got married, there was a beautiful series of marriage testimonies that were given by kind of senior couples in the community the educational community we were living in. And there was a beautiful couple from Scotland, or at least he was from Scotland, great accent. And they gave their marriage testimony. And he had this line that will stay with me forever. Maybe you both have heard this.
I feel like I remember the story.
Yeah.
From your class.
Coming
And he says, the line is basically like he looks at his wife and he thinks, how could I have married you then when I loved you so little?
Aw.
And again, it wasn't that like there was only a little love at the beginning. I mean, they were totally in love. They loved each other well. But that love gets better and deeper and wider and richer over the years. Now, there are seasons, there are hard moments, there are changes, all of these things. But part of the practice of marriage is growing that love, deepening that love, becoming the best lover to your spouse, and vice versa. And that is a great joy and a great delight, and part of the sanctification, I think, that God wills for us in the sacrament. The sanctification is not only like, bearing the cross. That's right. It is that. But we are called to joy. And the vocational path of marriage is a path of joy, a path that gets better as you go along, or at least has the potential to get much, much better through God's grace.
Yep. And I was going to close out my section of not exactly that, but the adventure side. Marriage is so beautiful, and it's the best, and it's super hard because life's hard. And we must never forget that our vocations are paths to holiness, which necessarily means lots of refinement, lots of transformation, lots of rounding out of the edges, so to speak. So marriage will do that, but the depth of joy is it's so beautiful. So it is such an adventure. Adventures are awesome. Who doesn't love an adventure? But there's parts of adventures that are not fun. There's parts of adventures that are not safe. There's parts of adventures that are this, but an adventure is good, and marriage is so beautiful. So I felt like there's a lot of this that is like, oh my gosh, it's going to be hard. But that all has to be couched in this environment of but it's this unbelievably both satisfying, fulfilling, beautiful, complex, rich, sanctifying experience and mystery that is marriage.
So amazing. Emily, I think we moved to questions. We'll give you just a second to get past the overwhelm that this wisdom might have impressed upon you. But give yourself a second and then let us have the questions.
This is good. Okay, I have a little segment in mind for us of marriage advice that we've received and what you guys have to say about it / what do you think the church would have to say about it? So kind of common marriage advice, which actually the first one I was going to ask was never go to bed angry, because I've heard some couples say if it's late at night and they're arguing, they're tired, they're maybe hungry, they can't argue about something. So it's okay to go to bed and then figure it out in the morning, which Scott, you kind of said that with just tell your spouse, I love you, and we'll talk about it later. But I have more advice that we've been given that I want to know your thoughts on.
Let's do it.
Ready? Okay. First one, happy wife, happy life.
Ooh.
I would say, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want to take happiness in too superficial a way, but yeah, I think that's true.
I agree. I mean, now,
so too.
like, the compliment is you want both to be happy, so to speak, and how you qualify happiness. But yes, I totally agree.
Nice. Okay.
Well, the two are one. So that's understanding it in that way, right? Where it's there's a common good of marriage, so that if one spouse is sharing in that good and delighting in that good, the other spouse necessarily is too. If that's not happening, then something else is kind of awry, or we aren't understanding happy wife in the right way. But I would definitely say that that's
agreed. And you paused so long that now I have a secondary thought, which is I do, Brittany and I have talked a lot about what does Ephesians 5 mean in marriage, and what is a man's role and what is a woman's role. And we're not trying to go exactly into that in clear ways, but we do fundamentally, Brittany and I think about the wife is the heart of the home. And so I do think there's a deep truth that, like, Brittany is the heartbeat of our home. And so if she's happy, it's going to help the whole home. So
nice.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one is don't try to change your spouse.
Oh, I'm all over this one.
Yeah, do it.
No, you were go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, this is like an interesting one. So why don't you tell us why it's interesting?
Okay. So is the question, should you try to change your spouse, or don't try to change?
The advice is don't try to change your spouse.
I totally disagree with this.
Yeah.
I 100% disagree with this, because it takes as its starting place, you're right just the way you are. Not so. All of us need to change. So should you try to change your spouse? Like, that's an odd angle exactly to take. Does your spouse need to change? Yes, because we all need to change. We all have areas that need to be rounded out, that we need to grow in, that we need to be sanctified. And your spouse was given to you as a gift to help do that in the sacramental order of God's design, if you're called to the sacrament of marriage. So you will change and should change in marriage. And the proper understanding is that each spouse is at the service of the other's growth. And so you are there to help supplement the growth. Now, I think where there could be an asterisk or a little bit of a nuance, it's you're not trying to change your spouse in accord of your vision of who he or she should be. It should be in cooperation with the organic development of how God's providence is unfolding in his or her life. So I don't like generally thinking like you shouldn't try to change your spouse. It's not exactly the angle I take, but no. You each need to change. You are called to marriage to support that change in the other, but that's ordered towards the vision and design that God is unfolding through time and history, not who you think like per se that person should be.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. So in Proverbs, as iron sharpens iron, right, referring to brothers, I think, but generally the point of friendship is to grow in virtue together. Iron can't sharpen iron without changing the other, right? So I think it's true. Like we are there, and in fact, we have a responsibility before God to play our part in shaping each other for holiness. And I mean, the church teaches this. So I think the bigger question is like, what is the saying getting at? There are all kinds of ways that this could go wrong, and you just started to like talk about some of them. And those I think are worth actually thinking through and talking about. I won't do it, but some of this is, and you're not called to be like your spouse's nag or their mother or father, right? You're called to be a husband or a wife, and there's a different way, and all these things. But I do think fundamentally we are called to form and refine each other in holiness, with God always being the primary agent, but we being his instruments.
There's an interesting, Brittany was bringing this up last night, and I can't remember exactly where she heard it, but it rung true, that there is, it's in line with the nagging thing, where there can be a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek way of like, wives can think, hey, I'm going to train my husband and love my kids, and love the kids, and how backwards that is. You're like, it's both ways, but for the example, a wife is called to love her husband and train the kids, but sometimes that can be inverted. And I think that's actually quite true. Like, and so I think that's what the question is getting at. Like, am I just trying to like tinker and manipulate with my spouse to like act in the way that I want them to act? Like, that's not it.
Right.
But are you supposed to be willing to call out like major maybe blind spots or ways that like your spouse is not living up to the virtuous way that he or she could, yes. And that can be hard too. So,
Yep.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's super helpful. We, in our marriage prep, we did it with Dr. Innerst, one of the professors here at the Augustine Institute.
plot twist.
And he told us that when you say I do to your spouse on your wedding day, you're saying like, I take you, husband or wife. And when you say I take you, you're talking about who they are today, right now, when you're marrying them, who they will become, who they are in God's eyes, and in like what God's will is for them. And I thought that was cool. Not just
I love that.
right here, right now. But
Yep.
okay. I'm gonna pivot to a couple of quick questions.
Great.
Is there a good book or devotional that you recommend for married couples?
That's a good question. I should have thought more about that. I mean, I have some favorites. They're not like, they vary in like immediate practicality. So let's just start in scripture. And I would say the book of Ruth is an amazing thing to read and reflect on with regards to marriage. The Jeweler's Shop is also really, really amazing. It takes a little bit of work to kind of like digest, but really beautiful lessons for marriage there.
We have a series on Formed if you want to do the Jeweler's Shop and want some help thinking through how to navigate it.
Yeah, good call out. And then there was the last one that was a little more practical. A little more practical, and I think really helpful is actually C.S. Lewis's book, The Four Loves. That has some parts that speak directly to marriage, and many parts that speak kind of around marriage and are important for marriage. So The Four Loves is a higher level kind of book. It's not, in the self-help genre, but it is very helpful and quite beautiful, I think. So those are kind of three recommendations. None of them are like a manual for marriage. I can think about that some more. I'm sure some will come to mind.
Yeah. Nothing comes like perfectly to mind, which is interesting, but some of the ones that, so Dr. Ted Edwards III has a book called Men, Women, and the Mystery of Love, which is kind of a summary of John Paul II's Love and Responsibility. We've found that as good like discussion fodder within our marriage. That my wife in particular really loves Three to Get Married by
Archbishop
Fulton Sheen.
Yeah, that is a good one.
And then the last thing that I have 2 points. They'll be quick. One is I do think it's really helpful to return to the vows that you made on your wedding day and pray with those. I think that is always a fruitful thing for couples to do, especially as you maybe get to an annual anniversary. And then the last one is more of a general comment, but this kind of prompted it. I do think it is good for a husband and wife generally to always be trying to grow spiritually together. That's kind of what the question's getting at. I do think you can almost pick up anything, and if you're doing it as a married couple, it'll find a way to get into the concrete realities of your married life. So whether it's scripture, the saints, so just anything is actually good. But those are some of the more specific ones that came to mind.
Yeah, I think it's worth hitting on that point, that the intention to kind of like work on your marriage, to do something, to read something, to discuss it, whatever it might be, that is already like a really great thing, right? And that, I think, definitely want to run with that.
Awesome. Okay, let's see if I can pull one more question before we go to our challenges. Okay, this one is a question from Robert, my fiance. What is a 5-minute practice we can do each day to strengthen our marriage?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Something quick you can do every day.
Oh, I can think of lots of little things. What I'm thinking about is like the seasonality of marriage. And I do think, okay, here's one thing. And this is like, I think people tend to do this anyway, but I think it's worth appreciating and kind of like emphasizing it. And that is typically spouses inhabit in part two different worlds. That is, whether if the spouses each have a career, they spend a lot of time in like a different world from each other. Or if one spouse is at home and the other at work, again, a lot of time kind of in different worlds from each other. And so typically at the end of the day, to kind of share that world with the spouse, to debrief on the day, to share the happenings at home, at work, in the other's workplace, whatever it might be, so that these worlds that otherwise could have a very real potential to separate spouses actually become a basis to unify. So it's kind of a simple debrief or informing about the day, and that I think is very mundane and sort of boring, but I think is actually really helpful.
Yeah. Mine was going to be something that's kind of endured for us over the years, is doing night prayer together. Now, we make a total Frankenstein version of our night prayer, which is we use parts of the Magnificat night prayer. So it's not like the official night prayer, evening prayer of the church in the Liturgy of the Hours, but we use the night prayer in the Magnificat because it's very short. So you can do it in like 5 minutes. But what's nice about it is it has end of the day intercessions. And so what we found is that's the moment where you can actually kind of unfold your day or what's on your mind in a way that's like you're praying about it together, but it's very helpful. So we found a great thing is to close out our day is to just, A, it's a good way to close out your day with God. And B, it's a very unifying thing that we do at the end of the day. That's just, it can take it's like 5 minutes, if not 10. So it's not too taxing regardless of the type of day you've had.
Okay, I want to say one other thing that I thought of, and it kind of encompasses all of this, but I think it kind of brings it to a nice point. I would say 5 minutes, right? That couples should spend 5 minutes holding hands or with an arm around each other in some way. Now, that could be like you go on a walk and you're holding hands. It could be you're doing this debrief at the end of the day and holding hands. It could be that you're praying and holding hands. But I do think there's something special about physical contact and how whatever it is that you're doing, it kind of like opens up the potential of that thing to be even more bonding and like intentionally so. So I would say spend 5 minutes holding hands or being, arm around the other while talking, walking, praying. Pick your activity.
Okay, related to this, this was a communication. I know I'm the worst. This was a communication win for Brittany. This was last year, so this wasn't that far ago, and we had been married for a long time. And she came to me and she goes, I need more hugs. And so related to that. And so now when I leave in the morning and at night before we go to bed, we just give each other a hug. And it's like kind of funny sometimes. But like she literally was just like, I just need more hugs. And I was like, great. So it's
that's really sweet.
The physical nature of it is just very good.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, do
right.
you guys have a challenge? My challenge is
I'm not in that
Robert
headspace at all. This is a good one.
Okay. I mean, there's some like obvious things, but I'm thinking about my beautiful wife, and I think over this next week my challenge will be, what I'm tempted to say is to find some new way of loving her, some new practice of love, since we are on a show called Practicing Catholic.
That's right.
That might be too ambitious because I feel like I've been fairly creative over the years and I'm not sure I can manage something totally new, but I'm going to try.
I like it. I'm gonna try to intentionally say thank you every day. I can be bad about just expressing gratitude to her, so I am going to I will say thank you intentionally once more every day. Hopefully, there's a couple times it falls in there naturally, but try to more specifically say I'm going to go home. Thank you. All right, Emily, thank you for opening yourself up to our audience.
Yeah, of course.
We're going to be praying for you.
Thanks.
We're excited. It's an adventure.
Thank you all for your prayers. And if you guys have any questions for Taylor and Scott, maybe we could do a part 2 about marriage, because I'm sure this will bring up a lot of things for people. So
yeah, it'd be fun.
You can submit your questions to practicingcatholicpodcast.com.
Yep. And also, please give us a rating on podcasts or Spotify or YouTube. That's super helpful for us. So that's that. So thank you so much for joining us on Practicing Catholic. We will see you next time.